You guys, I caved. I know I said that I was not going to set up another journal for 2024, and then I hemmed and hawed a bit about having a reading journal and whether or not I wanted to keep my books in my regular bullet journal or put them in something separate. But as you can see from the title of this video, I am setting up a reading journal for 2024. I am using the Literature 120 G paper. I don't know if that's grams, but the thicker paper for this journal. And I did get it embossed to say 2024 books across the cover of it. And really, the thing that kind of pushed me to actually set up a reading journal as opposed to including it in my regular Bujo is just the fact that I wanted to do a whole bunch of different challenges and track it a little bit more. And before, I was basically just writing down like a book title and a brief synopsis or my bullet point thoughts about it. And I wanted to round it out a little bit more and use it as a space to be very creative. So my plan is to do kind of spreads for some of these books as well, to make sure that they're really highlighting specific things about it. There's a reading challenge that I put in as well. But essentially, we'll get into it as we cross them off the list. But if you're new here, just wanted to say thank you for watching. My name is Adele Ashley. I post about books, beauty, lifestyle content, bullet journal content as well on here. And if you are returning, welcome back. I love all my subscribers and thank you for being on this journey with me. So to start with, what you're seeing here is I basically just created a pocket for my journal, and I actually create two pockets. So one is on this side and I'm just covering it in some craft paper. And then on the other side of that full sheet is I will be creating another pocket as well so that I have room to store things that I may need in the journal, whether that be like a little card that reminds me of like an affirmation, or I've had in my other bullet journal, I include my spacing guide and stuff like that in there as well. But essentially, whatever it is that I need to just kind of like stash and carry in my journal, I create a pocket there for it, and it essentially just holds everything that I need, and which is perfect. I know the literature journals do come with that pocket at the back as well, but I just find that I never actually use it. It's too big and I find it kind of difficult to get into at times, so I just create my two at the front. And as you can see there, I'm just using like glue tape and everything to tape it down. It's a really simple process. I tried using my corner punch for it and it was just too thick, so we just kind of fix that corner there with some scissors, and we're able to move on to our next page. So for my reading goals, I kind of wanted to make it look like a library card, like those old school ones where you punch in and punch out and have like your name written on them. I think it was really stuck in my mind because I had a friend telling me about how the Toronto library system is currently down, so people can't like take books out or anything fully or like electronically. Like they don't know what books they have in each library. It's kind of weird. But essentially she was like, yeah, they're using like the old school library cards where they write the name on it and everything. And it was so wild to me, just because I've never really picked up physical books from the library. I've always done digital, so they're digital books you could still get, but physical books are reverting back to old school library cards, which was kind of weird to me. So essentially all I did was just create a version of that on some calligraphy paper and just put my header in of reading goals for 2024, and then really got into what my goals were. So on those lines there on the side where normally you would have people's names and the date that they checked a book out, I opted to write down what my goals would be. So my first major goal, which is something that I include every single year, is just to read 100 books. And in 2023, I definitely did not hit that goal, which I'm actually okay with. Usually on average, I read about 100 to 120 books a year. And I just knew last year, pretty early on, it was a rough year. And I just knew that there was no way that I was going to hit it. So even though the goal is there, it's just really, I guess, read a lot or read more. And then I really want to read a variety of genres in 2024. I want to track my reading and reviews in a journal, which, I guess at the end of the year, that's pretty easy for me to tick off with this book. And then also just start tackling my TBR pile and reading more nonfiction. I read a couple memoirs last year through my book club, and every single one of them I ended up loving. So one of my goals for 2024 is to continue reading nonfiction and kind of figuring out what I like. Is it just memoirs? Can I do kind of like a business administration or a little bit more of like a self-help book? What exactly that looks like, but just more nonfiction. And all these goals you see kind of reflected through the rest of the book as well, or through the rest of my journal as well, which I really kind of liked. Was my setup. So again, I just used a ton of that glue tape to get that piece of calligraphy paper into my journal. I actually ran out of my Tombow tape roller pen thing, and I just haven't replaced it yet, even though I really need to, because I am going through this glue tape like nobody's business, because I don't have anything to glue things down. That, or I just need to get a glue stick. But either way, I got it in there to the front of my journal, and then I got to my reading tracker page. So as I mentioned, I am looking to read 100 books this year. However, I set this up to cover 120. So essentially, each of those little lines there count for, I think it's 12 books across. But essentially I was going to write the numbers into each one, and then as I finish a book, or at the end of the month when I go back to my tracker, highlight the books for each month that I have read. So yeah, this was a tedious spread for me to set up. I ended up really liking how it turned out, just with all the triangles and everything, but I did not know drawing 100 and something triangles would be so tiring, and something that I felt kind of very perfectionist about it, but it's okay. As you can see, I wrote all of the numbers in there, so I know what book I am referring to with each one. Or actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm debating whether or not I should put, when I do my monthly wrap-ups, if I should include a number with the book. So I don't know, I read The Getaway List by Emma Lord, so that is number 1, or if I should just count the books kind of as they go along. I don't know. We shall see what happens when I actually get to recording monthly books in there. And then I basically just took some of that craft paper that I have. It's actually something that I use throughout this entire spread, or this entire setup, which is groundbreaking, I know, to use craft paper for a reading journal setup, but we're going with it. And I also managed to find these transfer stickers at one of my favorite stores recently, and I was really excited to try them out, because essentially it's a sticker, but it ends up looking like it's printed into the page. And I found one that was book themed or journaling themed, and it just felt like the perfect fit for there, especially with all those extra like the scribbles and words and stuff like that on the page. So I essentially just kind of figured out where I wanted to place things. I have that scrap of paper that I'm putting down in the corner there, kind of to make it really feel like a journal, and my punch hole finally worked. And then this is just me figuring out how to use that sticker, because this was the first time I ever used it. I knew in the store they told me that you put it down and then you like kind of like scrape over top of it. I underestimated how much initially you have to scrape over top of them, but we got it, so I can't really complain. And then I realized that I found that it looked a little bit empty, so I just added some 2 stickers there really quickly. And then I added some more words up to the top. So I know earlier you saw me playing around with a sheet of paper and putting it in the corner, but I ended up changing my mind and realized that one of those words was kind of like perfectly curved at the top there, so I could put it in a corner as a highlight. And then I ripped another piece of craft paper kind of into a circle or an oval, I don't know what you would call it, a title, a header, and just ended up writing reading tracker on it there so that I could have a title for my whole spread. And I am so envious of people who are able to write in a straight line on a piece of paper, just freehand, but that has never been me. Like, it goes diagonal fast. So if anyone has any tricks for how they write straight without having to draw a line, please let me know in the comments, because I would love to be able to just whip out some straight handwriting without needing to draw guidelines beforehand. But there we have my trusty glue tape, the workhorse of these journal setups, just coming out there again and taking all of that glue off so that we could paste our title in. And I just really love how this entire spread turned out. I think it's so pretty. And then I moved on to one of my first challenges that I'm actually doing in this book. So when I was seeing people set up their reading journals, I noticed a lot follow or do a to Z challenge throughout the year. And it seems pretty popular, but essentially, if you don't know it, you just try and read the alphabet over the course of the year. So you're looking for a book that starts with the title a book that starts with a B, C, D, all the way down to Z. And I like the idea of just creating these like really cute little cards for A to Z and placing them in my book. And essentially, when I read a book that starts with a B, I will print a copy of the cover and paste it in there on top of it, so I have the covers for A to Z. I also opted to do it for authors as well. So with the authors, I'm not sure if I'm going to be following along as the author's first name or the author's last name, but essentially, to use Kennedy Ryan's This Could Be Us, one of my books I'm looking for this year, it could either go under T for this, or I could use it in my author spread under Ryan or maybe Kennedy. I'm not sure yet, but I think we're going with last names of the authors there. After that, I set up my book bingo spread. So this was another spread that I saw quite a lot in reading journals online, and I really loved the idea of it. Essentially what it is you are playing bingo with all the books that you read for the year. So I'm actually doing 2 separate bingo spreads. The one on the left there is more just general reading. So, you know, I wanted to read a book that's more than 500 pages, I can cross that off, or finishing a series I started, a book that I own but haven't read, things like that, that are fairly general that I can cross off for reading. And then my second one here, which is going to be on the right, is specifically for romance tropes. So I do read a lot of romance books. They're kind of like brain candy for me. So including popular tropes like Grumpy Sunshine or sports, age gap, office romance, things like that seemed really just kind of things that I already read. And then I just created a Dutch door there in the middle with 1 to 25 on the side, so that I know, say I look and see number 7, I know that correlates to a book that is more than 500 pages when I look back. And I have to give a shout out to Jashi Corin for that idea, because it's one thing to fill it in, but it's also nice to look back and know what book actually had that category, for what tipped it off. So that is the book bingo spread. I essentially just brought back that craft paper yet again to make a little header there. And then I also liked the idea, I talked about it in my my bullet journal spread setup, about how I like to gamify certain things just to make them fun. So I have rewards for getting a line for each line that I get in my bullet journals. So for example, one line in my category spread, I said that I could pick up stickers or ephemera. 2 lines is a workout set. 3 is new fountain pen ink. And my other one is for romance tropes. I tried to keep it a little bit more, I guess you could say almost romantic with it, but 1 line is a pastry or cake or a new candle, lunch or dinner at a new restaurant. And as you can see, I ended up really disliking writing it in, so I just recreated my little prize sheets on craft paper and stuck them in there to just make it look a little bit better for me. And then after that, I have a spread of all the genres that I am looking to explore in 2024. As I mentioned, one of my goals for the year was to read a variety of genres in 2024, and this is how I will be planning to track it. My goal is to read at least 2, or I should say 1 or 2 from each category there, and then just include the titles there. If I happen to read more, that's okay, but I do want to aim for 2 for each of those genres that are there. So fantasy, sci-fi, historical fiction, magical realism, things like that. And then after that, I go into a really simple series tracker spread. I realize that I actually have read a lot of different series, but I either started them or didn't finish them. So we are putting a spread in just to see how far we get along with our genres this year. Nothing serious. It might not get that filled up, or I might not refer back to it a lot, but I like the idea of having it there so that I can refer back to as needed. After that, I created a backlist spread. So I want to finish reading all of Maeve Binchy's books, dive into Sarah J. Maas's ACOTAR and everything else adjacent to that as well, and then also read all of Mariana Zapata's books as well. So those are just 3 authors who I chose for this year that I'm going to try and tackle. It's probably not something that I will necessarily tackle fully this year, admittedly. It is a lot of book. I think Maeve Binchy has 27, but essentially to guide my reading a little bit in the year when I'm unsure, I could reach for one of those books. My anticipated read spreads was honestly one of the most tedious spreads that I set up, even though I know I said that about the reading tracker, but looking back at it now, I'm anticipated reads was the one that almost took me out when we were setting this up. But essentially, it's kind of a 2-page spread for me. I have my anticipated reads on the left-hand side, and then I'm just creating a TBR list on the right there. And my TBR list was, anticipated reads was one of the hardest to set up, and TBR was one of the easiest. For TBR, I essentially just created these header boxes and then just wrote the word book into it as well, just so I could fill it in over the course of the year as I purchase books, or if there's anything that I want to read and I'm planning on reading. And then my anticipated read section is broken down by each month. So each month as books come out, or if a book pops onto my radar that I want to read, I will add it in to the corresponding section there. And I use these Midori transfer stickers to for each of the months, so it's labeled 1 through 12. And it did also come with like little word names for the months, I guess you would call them, which I was contemplating using as well, but they just didn't fit in my boxes. But I found these so cute, like that cat and the penguin there. They were just kind of like the cutest little stickers, but how hard I had to press and rub to get these on was excruciating. So, you see it here. I am kind of going away, but it honestly took me about 30 minutes per sticker to get them on. Like, it's really spread out there to make it look as if it's quick and efficient, but it took forever. After that, I get into my book bracket. So again, like I said, a lot of gamification here of my spreads and challenges to complete them. But essentially, I am going to use the pictures of the book covers to show which books are going up against each other and ultimately find out what my top book of the year is. So I use the rest of those transfer stickers, the month titles that I was talking about in each box. So essentially we have January going up against February, March going up against April, May against June, and so on and so forth for the entire year. And I just stamped in best book of 2024 into my journal, and we will add a section in for where the best book of the year can actually go. And I did want to incorporate some of those gold elements back into my journal, so I essentially used it as the lines between brackets to show kind of how it all flows out. But essentially at the end of the year, the best book from the first half of the year is going to go up against the best book for the second half of the year, and it will ultimately go, the picture of the cover will ultimately go into that big box at the edge of the page there labeled winner. This was another really simple page for me to set up, but essentially just a quotes page. So if I'm reading something and it really stands out, or I highlighted it in my Kindle, I'm just going to include it on this page as well. And I love how it turned out. I think I managed to find like the perfect sticker to go with it, just with that open notebook and the writing around it and the pen and just kind of tracking things down, because essentially that's what I'm doing. And then for this year, I have decided that I am going to start adopting the Copile system of rating books. So essentially there are 7 different categories that you look at when you are like rating a book. And then you would essentially just follow that and rate a book out of 10 for each of those, and you'd end up with a number which correlates to a star system, like a number of stars. So I created it for nonfiction and fiction, and this is another spread that was inspired by Joshi Corin. So essentially I just write out, it's a lot of writing here, but I wrote out just some questions that I could refer back to when I am referring to each kind of category, I guess you could say. So for nonfiction, I'm looking at, is it a credible source? Is it accessible? How's the writing, the payoff, individuality, logic, things like that. And then I have my stars at the top that let me know that once I get that number and divide it by 7, which stars correlate to which things. So for example, a book that rates 8 for me is going to be a 4-star book, as opposed to a book that falls between 2.3 to 4.5 is going to be a 2-star book. And then I had my rating guide title there, and just repeated that Copile on the right hand side for fiction books as well. So using the craft paper there to make kind of a little header that stands out, writing it in, all the different I guess topics or key points to look at. And I actually found that I've been using it for a little bit and thinking about it, and it actually works really well with helping me streamline how I rate my books. And then after that, we have one of my first kind of book club or tracking spreads. So I am part of the LV book club. We meet very close to my home. This is my in-person book club, and I recreated that kind of library card spread there and put it at the top, just to track all the books that we read for 2024. So for example, for January, I know that we are reading Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, so I just went ahead and already wrote it in there, just because we did pick the book in December. And then I'm just drawing out spaces for all 12 book covers to go in, with a little space. I think I included a space for, yes, I did. I included a space for stars to go there as well. And then I also wanted to track the themes at the bottom. So I know for January, our theme was fantasy. And for February, it's romance by a Black author, but we have not solidified the date yet. And for Christmas, I asked for a Canon IV2 printer, so I used it to print out the cover for that Red Queen, and we've already pasted it in, so we can track all 12 books that we read for the year. But getting into the flip through of the whole setup, as you can see, I did add one of those clear pockets from Amazon in at the front. I might end up taking it out, but for now it just corrals like extra covers and stuff that I've printed. But please let me know in the comments if you have a reading journal, if you have any suggestions actually for authors and titles that start with W, X, Y, or Z. I am struggling a little bit to figure those out, or even what I can use for as like a 4-line reward for both bingo trackers. That would be greatly appreciated if you could just pop them in the comments for me. But yeah, essentially I am really excited to use this setup. I will be posting about it on Instagram as well, as kind of some real-time reviews of books as I read them. But until next time, till we chat again, have a great day.